the most advanced recruiting techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Hire Power Radio Show with Rick Girard.
All right. Well, most of us have a tendency to fast track anyone who comes through an internal referral. The rationalization is that we automatically trust the referral source, so the person is going to be a great hire. And the time pressure to fill the role, and we are ready to extend an offer before the interview even takes place. Yes, there's an increased likelihood that the person will work out, but there is a danger too. Because the person is a referral is the exact reason why they need to be impressed with your thoroughness in your interview process. Process does not dissuade A players from joining you. It gives them the impression of excellence that's expected from everyone within the organization. I'm Rick Girard, and welcome to the Hire Power Radio Show. We help entrepreneurs and executives win the strongest hires by sharing insights from top-performing rebel entrepreneurs, game changers, and industry leaders like our guest today, Mr. Todd Ausherman. He is the CEO of Notaroo. Now, Todd is an attorney and entrepreneur with over a decade of experience in building high-growth companies in the financial services space. Having successfully exited multiple companies while personally hiring hundreds of employees along the way, he is currently building Notaroo, a lending software platform for the mortgage industry. Todd is here to share his experience with hiring through an internal referral, which is what makes Todd the perfect expert for today's topic. Todd, welcome to the Hire Power Radio Show today.
It's great to be here, Rick. Thanks for having me on. And anytime that I get a chance to swap stories when it comes to especially problems with hiring personnel, I'm always happy to do it. I've got several of these in my back pocket, so really excited to get into it with you today.
And I am too. So it's going to be invaluable to our audience. So today we're going to discuss why it's critical to thoroughly vet internal referrals. And then we're going to talk about how to ensure that the referrals fit. Sound like a plan?
Yeah.
Let's do it. All right. So let's talk about the challenge today. You actually started out with telling me kind of a story about your experience. You're grabbing an internal referral.
Yeah. Well,
let's share that with us.
Yeah. Kind of from a high level. So after I sold my last company, we were sort of brought into a corporate structure that already existed. So sort of a merging, if you will. And as part of that, I was sort of given a couple of people that were with the corporate entity that purchased mine. And it was sort of framed as, hey, we've got a couple of guys here that are going to be perfect for the division that you're building out. And we think these guys are A gamers. And, here's kind of a gift to sort of help get you started with, with hiring in this particular area.
So it was like a Trojan horse gift.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was the gift that kept on
You guys
giving.
can see where we're leading on this one.
Yeah. So, it's just one of those things. One of the hires was an absolute ace. One of the guys that came over, we're still friends to this day. He was just an absolute rock star. And the other one who was sort of positioned as, the manager or the person who's going to, sort of be my manager in this location. I was still living in San Diego at the time. This location was in Virginia. The person that was going to basically be my manager in Virginia was the one that we're going to be discussing today. And it's just one of those situations to where, the more that I learned and was able to uncover, the more that I realized I should have uncovered it way before I got started. So I ended up getting in pretty high over my head. And by the time I realized what was really occurring with this particular person, it was almost too late, and I think we mentioned it. It's like I almost had a mutiny on my hands with that division over in Virginia.
So let's take it a little bit back toward, okay, you get these two referrals, right?
Yeah.
Did you interview them, or did you just kind of trust that, hey, these people are just going to work out?
I interviewed them, right? So it was one of those things to where at the time I was so relieved because there was so much going on, right? After the sale of my company and trying to grow, we had very ambitious growth patterns. At one point, we were hiring 30 people per month. So I was very happy to sort of get this bone from the company that bought mine.
Sure.
And I that's what I took it for. So I was very excited about sort of not having to go through the process of vetting them. I thought that I was getting a couple of A gamers, and one absolutely was, and the other one, ultimately, I should have put the screws to him a little bit better. And really kind of, I was thinking about this and reflecting after we spoke the other day. One of the things that I could have, from an early level, uncovered was just asking if he had any conflicts with the company prior to him and I being introduced. And I wonder, I don't know if he'd have been honest with me, to be honest, because it's like he was kind of, let's just say that he had a very interesting relationship with the truth. But I feel like at least at that point, I probably could have read something into what was in store for me as we continued to work together.
Gotcha. All right. So, that's certainly a big challenge. And I think a lot of people go through this similar challenge where like they inherit some people, or they have the ability, and it's more a sense of relief, right? Like, oh God, I get to get this off my plate.
Yeah. There's that sort of trust factor where it's like, okay, cool. I've got somebody who's already, been through the process, knows the company culture. We really, he's kind of a yes man. I mean, he really was saying all the right things when we first started getting together. And, ultimately what ended up happening was I found out that because I'd kind of given him this assumed power, he really allowed that power to go to his head. And, as sort of my manager in Virginia at the time, when we were doing a lot of hiring, he was the voice of bringing on new people. And I think that's where the mistake ended up occurring, was he was the one that I trusted to hire sort of in his likeness, but based on the vision that I was bringing to the table. And what ended up happening was he was hiring people and really kind of creating his own little skunk works type of a group within the organization. It's everybody that he hired was kind of like his. Yeah. And so he was very focused on maintaining his group and what the interest ultimately of this particular guy, we can, call him Jay, but basically maintaining Jay's interest in the company and making sure that Jay was furthering his own sort of politics and furtherance with the company, because it's a big company, it was growing very fast at the time. And the interests of Jay were not the interests of what we were building. They were at one point very disaligned. And once I realized that we kind of had, a secondary captain sort of steering a ship in his own direction, it began to cause problems. And so there's a very significant divide with what Jay was bringing to the table in terms of, complaints within the organization, in terms of, things that I would pass down as, hey guys, this is mission critical. We have to do these things. He would sort of yes man me to my face and sort of talk bad about, what he thought the direction should have been to his people. And ultimately that got back to me. Yeah. Because I've got a pretty open door policy, and, part of my management style is to be as inclusive as possible. So a couple of people kind of came up to me and said, hey, I think you might have a problem on your hands with Jay here.
Got it. Now you guys didn't have, and I think this is where like, I'm going to kind of go back to the actual interview process, is that you didn't have this conversation about the vision or agree on it, and he didn't really buy in.
Yeah, well, and I think that was the other problem too, is, and this is the cautionary tale as well, is, when organizations are merging, the vision that I brought was very grand and very focused. He was already on another vision that was much more limited. I called the area, without getting into too much detail, the corporate structure was very blasé that we came in on, and I'm a pretty colorful guy. So we were very clear with our vision and our focus. The corporate culture that we came into was much less clear. So he was already sort of ingrained and entrenched in a culture that I just didn't pick up on until it was too late. So yeah, while I was saying exactly this is where we're going, this is the culture that we're building, part of the culture that I kind of came into was just to sort of nod and let it go, and nobody speak up or you might get in trouble sort of a thing. So he was promulgating that to a high degree. So he was just kind of yes manning me, but he was already entrenched in this sort of culture of, what do I have to do to not get fired? Got it. And that's not at all what we were trying to build. And in some ways, maybe I created a monster.
It's possible, right? I mean, you really have to ask yourself the question of like, do they align with my values? And that's why it's important to talk to them. And then,
yes,
I think as you're so eloquently putting, like, why is this person being referred to me?
Yeah, no, exactly. and not only that, but just kind of trying to understand exactly what their role was in the company was a mistake that I made, that if I could go back and do this a little bit differently, the questions I would have asked would have been, have you had any conflict with anybody in the company prior? Turns out This individual had been written up a couple of times and probably should have been fired before I came on. But because this company that, they're pretty firing averse. Everybody was very afraid of confrontation. And that's kind of what I walked into unawares.
So they make you do it.
Yeah. So ultimately I did it. And it was, it was funny because by the time I realized what was going on and I had to talk with him, I said, "Hey, Jay, what's happening? I'm getting all these reports that you're going over here and we're going over here." And then ultimately he was pretty oblivious to it. So I started, at that point, I started digging around to the corporate culture already, or the corporate entity already, and asking about, okay, so what's going on with this person? That's when I uncovered that he was already on strike 3. But nobody bothered to tell me when I signed on. It was more of a, hey, we don't know what to do with him, so let's just give him to the new guy, sort of a thing.
As a welcome gift.
Yeah.
What a nice welcome gift.
Yeah.
All right. You're listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. I'm your host, Rick Girard. And for our podcast listeners, we're going to take a quick educational moment from our sponsors. Hey, check out stridesearch.com. There you'll find additional content and resources to winning the strongest hires. Also, you can pick up the book Healing Career Wounds, which is available now on Amazon. Our guest today we're speaking with is Todd Ausherman. He's the CEO of Notaroo, which is his new company. We're talking about his last company because he learned a very valuable lesson today. And I thank you for coming on and sharing that with the audience. So once you realize this, what do we do to solve this problem? Like, what did you do initially? And then what structure did you put in place to avoid this in the future?
Yeah. Well, the big lesson that I learned there was really just, diffusing the hiring process, in the sense that I had given, this person a lot of power over who we were bringing into the organization. And that began to backfire on me once I realized that it became very obvious that he was rowing in a different direction. So going forward, what we ended up doing is I took a lot of my team leads and made them part of the hiring process. We created a much more organized and structured hiring process, wherein we had our recruiter and trainer would actually do would reach out to folks, and we had a lot of referrals. We had a lot of people that we would gather through sort of traditional means, and my recruiter would speak to them and sort of give the very first half an hour interview. After that, I'd have a couple of my team leads actually do the next interview based very much on our core values and our focus and our goals and where we were headed, and to really make sure that there was alignment on what we wanted to do, and the value system of the people that we were hiring was very important to us at that point. And then I had final say over everything. So if I couldn't do a face-to-face final interview, I would do a 30-minute phone interview, kind of depending on what the schedules whatever was happening with the scheduling. But the long and the short of it is I got much more involved in the process myself. And I also, made sure that I had a series of lieutenants that were sort of on a rotating schedule to do these interviews. Again, we were hiring 20, 30 people a month. So there's a lot of interviewing going on. Yeah. So I kind of I wanted to make sure that I was more involved in the process from a soup to nuts standpoint, and that we actually had a true blue process. So every single person went through this waterfall of tasks before we finally made the offer. And it made a tremendous amount of difference, just in terms of the people that we were hiring, and feeling like that they were a part of the team and that they weren't kind of part of this separate group was really huge. And then another big one that we instituted was really trying to create opportunities for people to get to know each other. Because again, it was a very large organization, very fast growing. So we did like a lot of offsite things like barbecues and things outside of the office to try to kind of keep things a little bit more relaxed. But also I found that it was very important to me that everybody understood and interacted with somebody, with people that they work with on a human level. I wanted people culture. To be friendly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. So you actually put culture to the front of how you hired and how you approached.
That was the big lesson. And that's, currently with my current company, we hire strictly based on culture. That's everything, is making sure that the people that we're talking about bringing into the organization, we really dig to find out what their personal values are. And if those personal values are aligned with the values of the company, well, we've come a long way, right? We've weeded out a lot of the folks that are, could potentially cause us problems. Now it comes down to, whether or not they have the skill sets that we need, or if they have the trainable abilities to be able to do those skill sets that we need. And that's a lot easier at that point versus what we were doing before. When I had sort of Jay running these things, it was much more skills based. and there wasn't a whole lot of emphasis on the cultural aspect of it, and that we had to kind of get in there and pull it by the roots.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like when you're 100% skills based, you get lucky. If you make a good hire, you got lucky, and more often than not, you're going to make a bad hire. And again, the fact that you've gone to a model where you're evaluating values alignment first is huge.
Well, and also too, you know, people that have really good skills, the problems, that they're able to hide their problems very successfully for a very long time. And so if someone's able, you know, to come in and let's say that they're a really killer salesperson or something like that, and you're like, oh my goodness, this person has unbelievable pedigree. Then you bring them in and, oh wow, they're really delivering results and their numbers are fantastic. But if you're not paying attention to what's happening outside the numbers, in the sense that, you know,
but everybody hates them.
Yeah, right. How are they to the support staff?
Yeah.
How are they to, you know, every other person that's not directly tying, or at least in their minds, it's not directly tied to their bottom line? Are they nice people? You know, and maybe some organizations that, you know, maybe they don't want nice, but I kind of feel like life is short, you know, and kind of living with a bunch of jerks from for the greater part of your day tends to be unsatisfactory.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a jerk though, and you want to be around other jerks, then I mean,
rock
that's
and roll,
perfect culture for you for sure.
Yeah,
but you know, I'm kind of like you. I've had a learning experience similar to what you talked about, where I've had somebody who was a phenomenal recruiter, did great, rubbed everybody in the team the wrong way, and when that person left, production skyrocketed through the roof. Everybody's personal production went up. And like, that was a hard thing for me to accept. Like, oh gosh, if I lose this person, that's going to be a big part of our income.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's like everybody else seems to know those problems sometimes, except for us in management or in leadership. It takes a while for us to figure it out, especially if we haven't been doing the right things from the jump off.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just remember doing a lot of jumping through hoops, trying to keep that person happy.
Yeah.
And then finally, when that person left, again, it was like, hallelujah. It was like the sky opened.
I love it.
Everything changed. And again, like, I just had a much happier team, and everybody wanted to come to work.
When you think about it, if you as the leader had to jump through a lot of hoops to make them happy, what did everybody else have to do to make them happy? I mean, it becomes, you know, it's almost like when you pull that person out of it and everybody's kind of free to go back to doing their own job or role or whatever their level of responsibility is. When they're free to pursue that, that's kind of where the magic happens. And when we have these people that we look at the numbers and it's like, the spreadsheet says they're awesome. Well, if we're not looking beyond the spreadsheet, then a lot of times we're actually poisoning our organizations.
Yeah, that is very true. All right. So you're leading with culture first, right? I think as we talked about this, with the way we outlined it, was culture first, spread the balance of power, which you kind of.
Yes.
So
extremely important.
Why is it important to spread the balance of power?
Because I think that, you know, and again, this is very much tied to a specific set of facts here with this individual. By allowing this person who, you know, was relatively new to me to have the power of hiring. I mean, when someone's being hired into a large organization, the person that they actually speak with that hires them, they're seen as a major authority in their life and in their future. And that's, they're the person that people turn to when there's any sort of an issue. Even if there's hey, if you have an issue, here's the chain of command, here's how this should go. That gets thrown out the window, especially if you have somebody in there that loves that power and is all too willing to subvert what the rules are to be able to maintain that power for themselves. So,
and by the way, that's a C player. Like, that's, I mean, we all want to avoid those
chaos causers. C for chaos.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, C players will hire other C players, or, you know, he might have been a B player, right? But they're going to downgrade the hiring, and then it just kind of creates all kinds of problems for you, because the people that are just taking the jobs are the ones that are just there for the paycheck, not for the mission or the vision.
Yeah, exactly. And also too, just a big part of that was by diffusing this power element, by bringing in other people in the decision. Number one, is it showed a lot of trust to my new managers that were coming in, especially in the Virginia branch, my lieutenants out there.
Yeah.
It showed them that, hey, I valued their opinion and I wanted their take on who we were bringing into the organization. And then number two, everybody also, because it wasn't just one person that was hiring all of these people, everybody always followed the protocol and they were trained the way that we wanted them trained. There was no sort of side way of skewing their upbringing in the organization by letting everybody sort of know that this is how we do things. There's, at the end of the day, I was at the top of the food chain. So that's kind of why I wanted to make sure that I was the one that sort of had final say.
Yeah.
But to get to that point, I wanted to make sure that I had all of my, my direct reports involved. And I wanted to make sure that the people that were coming on knew that it's not just one direct report. There's not one road, to me, or one road to advancement in the company. These are all the people that are going to be, helping us basically be successful both in the office. And I think that's the other part that I talked about was we tried to also create successful situations for people outside of the office where I feel like when you're hiring people, if they really can feel like they're part of the family or part of something bigger, because that's what it is, then they tend to perform better and they tend to last longer.
Yeah.
And that was the other big lesson there was, let's just not rubber stamp people and get them into the org, because as you said, we have a C player hiring C people. Let's try to hire people that are willing to go a little bit outside of that are willing to really make this a personal thing. I call it gaffing, give a flip. It's when people really care about the organization and the mission, they're not just going to show up and do, try to not be seen like Office Space and do just enough to not get fired.
Yeah.
They're going to come at you with ideas.
Yep.
And they're going to say, hey, this, kind of like fortunately what ended up happening with this individual was we had some people that gaffed and, they basically came to me and said, hey, this individual is subverting the message. And we don't like that. We want to be, we're a part of this bigger thing. This is hurting you. You need to do something about it. And
then when you did,
game changer.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot better for everybody. We had a lot more fun. We started hiring and attracting a lot of people that were much more mission focused and believed in the things that we did.
Yeah. Well, so that brings us to the topic of firing fast, right? So you learned that one, right?
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because we had two branches. We had the Virginia branch and the California branch. And any of the listeners that live in California understand that the California laws, the employment laws are very different than almost any other state. So in order to release somebody, we had to go through several steps. We had multiple strikes. We had performance improvement plans, and it wasn't just as easy as for us to just say, hey, this isn't working. We need to let you go. Here's your severance. So that's kind of when I found out, though, as I was digging, and I was like, I've got to get this person out of this role as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And that's when I found out that, okay, wait a minute, we have a couple of strikes already here. First of all, how come nobody told me that right before they give me this person? Number one, but that's neither here nor there. Now that we were able to take those things, now we knew them, and it's like, oh, okay, this isn't strike one. This is actually strike three. And I was able to move pretty decisively and remove that person. And I just remember thinking to myself, after that occurred, it was almost cowardice in a lot of ways for the org to, rather than removing this person, which he should have been removed long before me, just trying to redirect somebody or push them off to another division or to another role in the company. That doesn't do anybody any good.
No,
it creates, and all
especially
it does is,
not him.
Yeah.
No, seriously, like releasing him to the world, he could find a place that he's going to be better suited.
Absolutely.
For. And I think that's your responsibility to do.
Yeah. And from a personal level, I like the guy,
Yeah.
I would definitely, have a beer with him or something like that. He just was wrong for the organization, as you put it. It needed to be done not only for the org and what we were trying to do, it needed to be done for him.
Yeah.
So he could go out there and actually, I think that he's probably a business owner at this point. Like he was, that sort of mindset. So hopefully he was able to land on his feet and build something in his own image and vision.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. All right. So you have this thing, a leader interview. So tell me about that before we wrap up here. So you have like kind of this unique way of, the penguin question. Tell me about that.
Oh yeah. So it's funny because and I really obviously I've read your book and we applied those principles and I love the section you have on those knockout questions. And what we ultimately did at this particular organization is once, I kind of took on the final say role, we believed that, our spirit animal were penguins. And I'd always ask people at the end of the interview, especially if it was going really well, is, what do you think about penguins? And what I found were that people that like penguins typically did well in our organization. And it sounds so silly, but there was one person in particular I recall, and he didn't like penguins. He's like, well, I was like, what do you think about penguins? He said, I think they're stupid. And it kind of took me back a little bit. And I thought, well, that's kind of fair though. Like, it's a weird question. So I'm just going to go ahead and, I'm not going to let the penguin question be a knockout question. That's silly. And I ended up, bringing the person on, and I had to let him go soon after. I should have stuck to my guns on my knockout question. So that was the big takeaway there, is even a silly question or seems silly as a knockout question, if it's working and there's history behind it, there's no reason to second guess yourself, or I wish I didn't second guess myself, I should say.
But you know what? Look at it from the perspective, you're actually judging somebody's attitude.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
It's read the room.
He thinks, penguins are dumb birds. I don't like them, right? That's kind of somebody with a poor attitude.
Yeah.
Right? Who doesn't like penguins?
And especially in that context, like, why would I ask?
I mean, did he grow up in Antarctica and maybe some king penguins ate his food?
I mean, they dress sharp.
Yeah.
It's like
they're wearing tuxedos all the time. They dance.
Yeah.
Happy feet.
And they have one partner through life too. Like penguins.
Yeah.
They have a very sophisticated social structure, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of different types of penguins. They fly through the water. I mean, we can, maybe we should, we could spend I could spend all hour just talking about penguins and how awesome they are.
Well, luckily for me, we're almost close to time being up. No, I like penguins. So, all right, well, shoot, what would be 2 or 3 key takeaways you can give the audience that can plug into their business today?
Yeah. So and just going back from my experience, it's, especially if you're coming into a new organization, if there's a merger or an acquisition, and there's going to be people being brought from one team to the other, doing a little bit more digging and not just believing people when they say, oh, this person's going to be great for your division.
Yeah.
To actually put them through the process as you would if it wasn't somebody that came from the company. That was the first one. And then the second one too is kind of how we finished on. It's, once you find, and sometimes it happens in very odd, creative ways, but once you find those knockout questions and that when people answer in a certain way, that they're going to fit your culture, your vibe, don't second guess that.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I use knockout questions all the time. I think they're super valuable to really understand whether or not somebody aligns with the organization.
Yeah. And it's one of those things to where, yeah, I wish that I would have, held more true to my guns on that one.
Todd, man, thank you so much for your time investment today. And I want to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community. Now, what would be the best way in which members of the audience can find you, connect up with you, find your company?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a LinkedIn guy, so the easiest way is on my LinkedIn, and that's just Todd Ausherman, Ausherman. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me. Now, Notary, we're growing fast, and we're sort of in our infantile stages still. So
yeah, but you're hiring though, right?
We are hiring.
So
yeah.
Anybody who's listening.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're looking specifically right now. We're looking for development help. So we have a couple of devs we're looking to fill right now.
Everybody is.
I know. Yeah.
I know. Stay in line, brother. We all are. All right. Well, shoot. I want to thank our listening audience for tuning in to this week's episode of Higher Power. Quick thanks to our team, Brian Colburn, Andrea Ballin, and Ayla Gerard. If you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share. After all, this show's for you, and we want to continue to deliver great, valuable content for you every week. You can join the Higher Power Radio community at Hire, H-I-R-E, Power, P-O-W-E-R, radio, R-A-D-I-O.com, or you can drop me an email at rick@stridesearch.com. Next week, we're going to be off. We're taking a little bye. I haven't taken a week off yet. I know. Sorry, guys. But it is holiday weekend. But in the new year, January 4th, our guest is going to be Bruce Watanabe. He's the co-founder and CEO of PowerBuy. I'm your host, Rick Gerard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Happy holidays and Happy New Year. Aloha. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power Radio. Catch our LinkedIn Live show every Tuesday at noon, or download the podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform. We appreciate you joining us on Higher Power Radio with your guide to recruitment success, Rick Gerard.